Still continuing our Good Morning show, and now we're going to talk about our topic about the tourism sector. As we said earlier, we shall talk more about the efforts exerted by the state to develop a very vital sector of the economy, and that is the tourism. We are now delighted to be joined over the phone by Mr. Hazem Hasan. Mr. Hazem Hasan, tourism expert. Hello, doctor.
Hello, good morning.
Thank you so much for having the time to talk with us.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much. We are going to this following report and we will be back with you.
Okay.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli stressed that tourism development was a top priority for various government entities, highlighting the sector's crucial role as a major economic activity that creates jobs, generates foreign currency and yields diverse socio-economic benefits. Speaking during a meeting at the cabinet premises in the new capital to follow up ongoing sectorial development efforts, Madbouli said that Egypt had introduced numerous incentives and facilities to maximize the potential of this promising industry. He added that the state was working to increase investments and expand hotel capacity, emphasizing the government's commitment to continuous dialogue with tourism investors to address their purposes and complaints. In the presence of ministers of tourism and housing, as well as a great host of senior officials from relevant state bodies, the Premier discussed investors' demands, especially those related to attracting international airlines, connecting new airports to transport networks, and offering more incentives for various tourist destinations. During the meeting, the Minister of Tourism reviewed the sector's latest rates and indicators and briefed the Premier on the Minister's efforts to support and advance the national tourism industry. Meanwhile, the Housing Minister revealed that the Tourism Development Authority, acting as one-stop shop for investors, will begin coordinating with consultants to chart new tourism areas in North Sinai and along the Red Sea coast to maximize the investment potential.
Back now, we're having on the phone Mr. Hazem Hasan, tourism expert. Doctor, are you still with me?
Yes.
All right. Let me start by asking you, Mr. Hazem, how does the new budget of the state-owned holding company for tourism and hotels reflect indicators of recovery and growth of the tourism sector in Egypt?
Yes, very true. In the past years, we noticed that there is a big wave of investments in tourism and hotels, yes, especially after the efforts of the government in the infrastructure. The investment in the infrastructure by the government was very promising, and it gave a lot of opportunities, new opportunities. When we speak about, of course, New Alamein, when we speak of the new capital city, and the new city that were built next to the old cities. Of course, the infrastructure is very important, and it attracts all investments, including tourism. So we started to work on this very well, and there are some future projects that are really very ambitious in Egypt. Of course, tourism is, let's say, the pilot in any investment. When we see that the infrastructure is suitable and there are many attractions, like Egypt possesses a lot of attractions, either from the archaeological side, either from the attractions of the beaches, sandy beaches, the beautiful weather, especially in winter for the cold countries like Scandinavians. We see that Egypt managed to be one of the major destinations. So when we look at all this potential that Egypt possesses, of course, now we are working on the infrastructure for tourism and hotels. So this is very promising, and I think it will be we will get excellent results very soon. I must say that the way or the time that we need to get results on the ground from these investments, this will need a few years, hoping that the troubles in the region will get to an end. I believe there will be a huge step forward for these investments.
Okay. Another question, what about the importance of targeting revenues of around 9.4 billion pounds and net profit worth 5.5 billion pounds?
Yes, of course, this is a good step forward when we see actually the need of the tourists all over the world to travel, especially to new destinations, because Egypt, unfortunately, in the past years, among the reasons why it was not one of the main destinations was the infrastructure. If we look at the experience of Turkey, for example, of Turkey, they had a very important experience, and this was because of the infrastructure mainly. So the infrastructure today in Egypt and the security also that made a huge attraction for investments either from Egyptians or foreigners, especially the Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, like Emirates, who are working on investments on the north coast. Of course, there's a huge potential in Sinai and the Red Sea too, without neglecting also the Nile Valley, Upper Egypt. So we see that the growth of investments is a major asset in making or developing the revenues from tourism. Of course, we have to mention that the inauguration museum also was reflected on the revenues and the capacity of the hotel rooms that Egypt possessed before in the past years was very limited, to the point that we had some demand on the travel on the tours in Egypt, but unfortunately there was no space. So when we see that there is a big growth in the construction of hotel rooms all over Egypt, we see that this will be reflected very soon on the revenues coming from tourism. So this is a very something very interesting and very important to raise the growth, and the more we build hotel rooms and the infrastructure, the more that it will attract investment.
Okay. Well, how important it is to boost the participation of the private sector in managing and developing the tourism assets?
Of course, the private sector, especially in tourism, plays the main role, because the private sector means the travel agencies, the hotel chains, all the elements of of tourism are mainly based on the private sector. The role of the government is just to prepare the infrastructure and the sustainable development, so that we could find, as private sector, they could find the solid ground to build on and to start on making promotions on Egypt, and to go further in adding more touristic sites ever on the map of tourism in Egypt. And Egypt possesses also major attractions that were not really put in value on the tourist maps in Egypt. So this is a very important point also, that the more we attract investments through the private sector, we see that it will attract more and more investments from the private sectors, either locally among Egyptians or foreigners like as I mentioned, like Saudi Arabia and Emirates.
Right. And what do the nearly $1 billion US dollars worth of investment represent for the future of the tourism sector?
These are actually figures that show the raise of the investment in Egypt in the field of tourism. But this is just one primary step on the road, on the way. So why don't we add? We have a lot of ambitions to add more and more investments and to raise the figures of investments and of money invested, and of course reflected on the revenues that will raise as a result of this raise in the investments.
Okay. And what about the most notable tourism and hotel assets the development plan target?
Yeah, of course. As we all know, for hotels, some Egyptian investors, they start to build hotels and spas and everything, and resorts, and then the international chains, they come and they manage these hotels. So, of course, there were some of the famous hotel chains that they retreated from the Egyptian market, unfortunately, in the past years, especially after 2011. But now they're coming back, and some other new chains, hotel chains, that they started to appear in Egypt, and the growth actually of the infrastructure and the investments in building hotels and resorts in Egypt attracted a lot of chains, international hotel chains, to come and to start to work in Egypt in hotels, and this is also very promising because the big names in the field of hotel chains attracts, let's say, the clients of these hotels all over the world. So when we see big chains either starting their business in Egypt, who never been or never existed in Egypt, and now we see the comeback of the big chains, this will attract a lot of tourists who are loyal to these big chains. Of course, we know the system of loyalty organized by big chains for their clients. Of course, this will be, let's say, a free promotion to their hotels in Egypt, and this will be attention of direct promotion through the chains that are working on our hotels.
Okay. Mr. Hazem, to what do adding 1,700 hotel rooms would cover that increased demand on the sector in Egypt?
I believe that it's just a step forward, because we have the potential to build much more hotel rooms when we'll look at the potential in the Red Sea. We see the vast coast, the large coast and long coast that we have in the Red Sea, the long coast that we have in Sinai. The infrastructure now is everywhere. Also, we are working actually on the renewable energy as in Upper Egypt and in the Red Sea, and very soon, I hope, in Sinai. This will grow the production of energy, and this will help out to start new areas in building the hotel rooms. And as I mentioned before, I know very well some years we had a lot of demand on coming to Egypt for tourism, and unfortunately there was no space, there were no rooms available for this big demand. We need to get the level of 30 million tourists a year, and this is an indicator that we need to raise the number of hotel rooms that we have. And what was done till now, it's a step forward, but it's not the end. We need to attract more investments in this field, and to work on new places, new tourist attractions, new hotels, new resorts. And we have the potential in the country now with the new web of infrastructure that we are working actually on.
Right. Well, how important is the joining of new international hotel chains to the Egyptian market?
Of course, as I said, for the big hotel chains, they had a good presence in Egypt. Okay, but I believe that there was a big gap, a fall for these chains in their investments in Egypt. But when the international chains found out that the situation in Egypt became stable and the security, of course, is here perfectly, is present perfectly in Egypt after the period of 2011, the hotel chains figured out that Egypt is a very promising market, and that's why they started to come back. And we have so many examples of big chains all over the country, either in Upper Egypt, like Luxor and Aswan, like in the Red Sea or the Mediterranean. We see North Coast. We have a lot of chains now who are working on managing a lot of hotels. So this, as I mentioned, a step forward, but it's not the end. It's the start for a big, big movement of investment towards building hotels and resorts and attracting more and more tourists. So the chains are a major asset in the hands of Egypt to attract tourists
Well, for another question, how would you assess the current performance of Egypt tourism sector compared with previous years?
The efforts are very, very important. I believe that the growth that Egypt is making actually in the field of tourism and hotels is attracted the attention of the world. And of course, we all know the importance of security and infrastructure for tourism. I forgot to speak about the transportation, not only the roads and the traditional infrastructure like water, electricity, and natural gas, but also we must mention that, for example, in the big cities like Alexandria, like Cairo, we see that we started to make the transportation and common, like the monorail in Egypt, in Cairo, between the west of Giza to the new capital city, the high-speed train that will cover the main cities and the main attractions, like the Red Sea and Upper Egypt. We see the subway, the Egyptian subway, and there will be a station that will be inaugurated very soon in front of the Grand Egyptian Museum. So this will solve a lot of problems for tourists coming on their own without outside of an organized trip to Egypt. So this will raise with a very high potential the number of tourists visiting Egypt, not only the traditional and classic tourism with the travel agencies, but also they come on their own when they book their trip on internet, and they come and they use the ways of transportation that we as Egyptians, we use. So all of this will, the result of all of these efforts, of course, will add a value to the number of tourists coming to Egypt.
Right. Mr. Hazem Hasan, tourism expert, thank you so much. We were delighted to be joined with you today on the phone. Thank you very, very much.